When the Range Rover was launched 50 years ago, it came with the tagline, "A car for all reasons." Pretty catchy, I think you'll agree, and a big billing. But I don't think anyone at that point would have foreseen just what a success the Range Rover would go on to become. Because you see, while you might think that it's just a very expensive halo car for the JLR brand, actually it's something of a financial linchpin. Because pre-COVID, this was selling up to 60,000 units a year, and that was at an average price of £108,000. So yeah, this is pretty important. And now there's a new 5th generation, so it better be good. A pretty bold design, I think you'll agree, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But I thought we'd start off, well, with this split rear tailgate, because it's such an integral part to the whole Range Rover image, isn't it? We've got event seating in here, so hidden under here are some cushions which you can bring out, and then you pop this up here, you've got your backrest here as well. There's also an option sort of load space divider which you can have in here as well, which is all new and funky. But yeah, it's all about the event seating, isn't it, really? To be able to sit here, and they've changed it. So you've now got speakers in this tailgate here, so it will focus the sort of music on the rear speakers anyway, but you've got it out here to give an extra bit of ambience, I suppose, whilst you're sitting here. And also, I really like this, just sort of moulded in there, little things so you can put your pint or glass of champagne, which is just pretty cool, isn't it? Load space in here, so 715 litres if it's sort of filled up to the waistline here, 818 if you go all the way to the roof, and then if you put the seats flat, it's 1,841 litres of load space. Anyway, let's talk about that design. Such a piece of theatre, isn't it? And there it is in all its glory. I think this rear end really is the most successful bit of the new design, and Land Rover hasn't always had the most successful rear ends in recent years. Here's looking at you, new Discovery. But this, so nice and clean, isn't it? They've reduced the lines. There are fewer lines overall, and then the showpiece has to be these lights, which are hidden until lit. So you can't even see the indicators here. Obviously, you can see the side lights here. And the way they work, in fact, to get them sort of totally black when they're off, is all the LEDs actually point inwards towards magnifying prisms that then give them enough power to show up through the blackness here. One of 125 patents on this car. We've also got the hidden wiper up in the roof here. Overall, yeah, it's just a really nice, clean but bold piece of design. I think the next most impressive part of the design of this new Range Rover is the profile here. I'm really glad this is in the sunset satin gold paint, because I think you can really see that whole sort of monolithic aspect of it, the sort of the hewn from solid look to it. You've got 3 clear lines, so you've got the sort of the line up here with the sort of the gently falling roof line here, and then perhaps most importantly you've got this waistline here, because they've got rid of what they call the waist finisher, so it looks like the glass just goes straight into the bodywork there. Then moving back here as well, they've got rid of the D-pillar finisher, so again it all just adds to this really clean look. So you've got these 3 lines, one up there, one here and one here, and then you've got the very sort of distinctive Range Rover look of the short front overhang, and then the longer sort of tapering boat tail look round the rear. Let's talk about some of the more technical aspects of it. So the new body structure, 50% more rigid overall, and that's despite the fact that it's got the panoramic roof up there. 33 Newton meters per degree if you want the actual torsional stiffness of it. Wheels, 23-inch wheels, but they're no heavier than the old 22-inch wheels, and they've kept the sidewall there, so they haven't just sort of increased the wheel and shrunk the sidewall, so it should still be comfortable as well. Wheelbase is 75 millimeters longer overall than the previous generation, and there is a long wheelbase which we'll come back to. That's 200 millimeters longer than this. Now, overall, it's just over 5 metres long. And the wheelbase, it's just under 3 metres long, so 2,997 millimetres if we want to be precise. And I think one of the big pieces of technology that I think is, people will really notice, yes, we've got terrain response too, we've got 295 millimetres of ground clearance, all the things you'd expect. We've got the electronically locking rear diff, but this has got rear wheel steer on it. And it's got a massive 7.3 degrees of angle it can add. Now, why is that important? Well, because of the turning circle, effectively. So this has a turning circle of 10.95 meters, which, to give it some context, that's almost identical to a Golf. It's actually slightly better, I think, than a current Ford Focus. So that's ridiculous, isn't it, for something this big to be able to turn in that shorter space. Anyway, moving on down here, elsewhere on here we've got new 5-link rear suspension, so that's to help it sort of integrate with the electronic architecture. New dampers in there as well, so we've got air suspension, but we've got Bilstein 2-valve monotube dampers in there, and they say they've got a 63% sort of greater breadth of capability than the dampers in the previous generation. So they seem really excited about those in terms of just helping ride comfort apart from anything else. And we'll come on to how they're going to integrate into some of the electronics in a moment. Moving further down the side here, so we've got a 48-volt anti-roll system, as you would expect, but Land Rover is saying that this has got a class-leading amount of torque that it can generate, so 1,400 Newton meters, and it can generate up to 900 Newton meters within 200 milliseconds, so incredibly fast response. Other things, this Range Rover can decouple its front axle, so above 21 miles an hour and below 100 miles an hour, it can be rear-wheel drive for extra efficiency. And talking of efficiency, we should probably chat about the engines. In terms of the engines, well, we've got the 4.4-litre twin-turbocharged V8, which is the headline car, I suppose, in the first edition. That's putting out 530 PS and 750 Newton meters of torque, which is 553 pounds-foot of torque and 523 brake horsepower, if you like, old money. But I think the big news is the PHEV element of the new Range Rover. So we've got various inline sixes, so we've got inline diesels, 2 versions of MHEV, so that's mild hybrid electric vehicles in the diesels, and then the big one for me is this inline 6 Ingenium engine with the full PHEV technology under there. So we've got 503 brake horsepower from that system and an extra 700 Newton meters of torque. So that's pretty similar really to the V8, but you've got the capability of travelling up to 100 kilometres on electric only, which is pretty good, really. So they're reckoning 80 kilometres, real world. And I can't see why more people wouldn't go for that. And it's different to the previous generation Range Rover PHEV, which was they were adapting to the situation. This has been designed from the outset, so the batteries are down low. This is a much more complete system, really. So that's the one I think probably is going to be most popular, I would have thought. Who knows? Perhaps everyone will still go for the V8. I think, whilst I can, still going to do that. I want to do 0-62 in 4.6 seconds. So there we go. We shall see. There will also, incidentally, becoming a full battery electric vehicle version of this in 2024. So we're going to wait a little bit longer for that, but it is on the way. Just whilst we're around the front, let's talk about the design here, because I think it's the least surprising element of this new Range Rover, but equally I think they've wanted to keep a very recognisable face. The rear is undoubtedly different, the side is very modern. This is just cleaned up, very definitely Range Rover. I like this grille, which there's a bit of heating element to it, but I also like the fact that it looks like it's just been sliced off like that, keeping that whole monolithic feel, the idea that it comes from a bigger solid piece. These lights also, as we're used to now, that whole cut glass effect. And then down here, it looks very simple, but actually they've done some clever things. So they've hidden, the fog lights in there, and then things like the parking sensors are hidden in the black. So it just keeps the whole thing looking nice and clean. Anyway, I think we should have a look inside. While I go and get myself comfortable, it is worth mentioning the SV versions of this latest Range Rover, which get new ceramic badges that apparently use the same techniques applied to luxury watch faces. Tick-tock.
Anyway, the SVs are not about adding more power and performance to the platform, but rather amping up the luxury and providing the possibility for more personalisation. There are subtle tweaks to the Range Rover's appearance, both front and rear, and as well as 14 additional hues in the SV Bespoke Premium palette, there are 2 overarching colour themes on offer. SV Serenity, with Corinthian bronze exterior accents, and SV Intrepid, with anthracite and graphite finishes, for those that like to give off a stealthier vibe. Personally, I prefer the slightly cleaner look of the standard car, but horses for courses. Right, let's see if I've clambered in yet.
Inside here, well, we've got very much a command driving position, so you still sort of sit on the car rather than sort of in it, although I say that, I still feel it's a bit further down than perhaps before. You've got a familiar view out over the bonnet, just the sort of very simplest of hints of a sort of castellation that harks back to the original Range Rover when you really needed to be able to see those front corners for off-roading. Now, of course, we've got billions of cameras and things to be able to help you with all that. Overall, I'm going to talk about design in a second, actually. First, doors, because you can now get, as an option, fully powered doors, which will work at sort of on slopes of up to 10 degrees. So this can cope with inclines of up to 45 degrees off-road, but yeah, doors will open and shut, the press of a button, optionally, at, on slopes of up to 10 degrees. So that's quite cool. They've also got, they're saying, bigger sort of grab handles here, so that if you're off-road and people are going around like that, obviously not the driver, they're only holding onto the wheel, but people don't have to go for the handles up there. Anyway, overall design, again, they've kept it cleaner. They want this to be a bit more of a sort of a sanctuary, I suppose, so you can use it as a mobile office, I suppose, but generally, yeah, should be nice and calming, and they kept everything quite sort of horizontal, this new steering wheel, so that's very much this sort of, you know, twin spar look across there. Technology, a lot of technology in this car, starting with software updates over the air. So there are 69 modules, I think, that can be updated over the air. So in the cloud is a virtual version of this car that it can then recognise whether it's sort of, you know, this car matches that one and what it should be, and then all the updates happen, hopefully seamlessly. So that's pretty clever stuff. These two screens, we've got a 13.1 inch screen here and a 13.7 inch screen here, both of which are actually, I've seen this one before, it's sort of floating, and again, I just think Land Rover's done this really well. I'm a big fan of this new Pivi Pro system. It looks really clean. You might think that it's sort of, you know, it's a bit stuck on there, but somehow it just looks well enough integrated, but fresh somehow. I like the fact it's very gently curved as well. And then we've got the screen here as well, which is not sort of, it's slightly floating, which just gives a nice sort of airy feel to it all sorts of materials in here, sort of the leathers you might expect, that you can now go up to a full sort of semi-aniline leather, I think. At the top end, these sort of more open pore woods here, they talk about sort of a coffee table look. Whilst we're down here, you can have ceramics for here as well, which is a nice sort of cool touch. Gearbox, every one of the models, I should have mentioned this before, gets the 8-speed ZF Auto, obviously with 2-speed transmission, so low and high ratios, low for off-road or if you're towing, which is up to sort of the standard 3,500 kilos of towing capability. Also got these rather nice paddles up here because this is the V8 first edition, recognise those from the F-Pace SVR. Yeah, feel very nice and metallic. But refinement has been a big thing in here as well, so that's sort of all part of the technology, but it starts with the hardware. So they say there's 25% less sort of noise coming from the structure, transmitted by the structure, a lot of that to do with the new 5-link rear suspension, but they've got noise cancelling in here, which is 5 times the sort of the effective range than before, and a lot of that comes from speakers in the headrest, because each of the 4 main headrests here has 2 60-watt speakers in it to, well, help with noise cancellation. It's part of the overall Meridian system, which has, I think, 35 speakers. It's a 1600 watt system, and yeah, the whole idea is just to keep this very serene and obviously help Alexa to hear you, because Alexa is now in here as well. You just need an Amazon account. There's also Spotify in here, so you can connect to that more easily. You don't need your phone, but if you've got your phone, then it will wirelessly connect to Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. And talking of phones, actually there is also an app, so you can drive this car from outside, which somebody pointed out to me before. Actually, you can do things like on a farm. Obviously, you can do the car parking space thing, narrow car parking space in and out with the phone. But on a farm, you get out, you come up to a gate, get out, open the gate, then you can drive the car through with your phone and then shut the gate again. So you don't sort of in and out, dragging mud in and out lots of times. I thought that was quite a nice thing. Rest of the interior, what else to say? Oh, there's also air purification in here as well. So there's a Panasonic Duo Nano X system, because obviously we live in a world where we're all terrified of airborne diseases, and rightly so. So yes, there is a new air purification system in here as well. But of course, it's not all about the front. I think we need to talk about the rear seats as well. The big news back here really is that we've got 3 different seating options. So we've got 4 seats, the sort of executive setup. Then we've got the 5-seater, so that's what this is here, which, to be honest, when you put this sort of central armrest down, the 3rd seat down like this, it becomes pretty much as luxurious as the 4-seat, I would say, but with greater versatility. And then the big news is that for the first time, if you get the long wheelbase, you can have a 7-seater version. So we've got a 3rd row of seats, and they're very keen to point out that this, if you get the extra seats, you're not the poor relation sitting back there. So you've still got the cubby holes, you've still got the charging points, you've still got all those sorts of things. So you don't feel like you've been shoved all the way back there and you've forgotten about. Talking of charging points, there's something like 14 different charging points in here, which is, you shouldn't be wanting for power. In terms of trim levels, we start out at SE, then up to HSE, then Autobiography, and then this is, as I said before, the 1st edition.
In terms of interior SV options, you can have the impressive Signature Suite option on long wheelbase models, which includes the rather dramatic club table in the back. Mosaic marquetry and seamless metal inlays are also an option through SV, while the 13.1-inch screens available in the back are the largest ever fitted to a Range Rover. If you wish, the seats can be trimmed in contrasting colours front to back, and there is the option of a sustainable Ultra Fabrics material. Oh, and of course, you can have a refrigerator between the rear seats, complete with Dartington crystal glasses, for toasting your latest success.
In terms of pricing, we start out at £94,400 for a D300 SE, and that rises to £135,400 for this 1st edition. Obviously then it's more, it's like another couple of £1,000 I think for the long wheelbase version, plus other options that you might have. Certainly a lot of money, and financially it should be underpinning JLR for some time to come. Overall, I think it is jolly successful. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. For me, I think it encapsulates another one of those taglines that they came up with for the original Range Rover, from farmhouse to opera house. God, they had some good taglines, didn't they? Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It really does help us.